This week on the Nittany Dispatch, we discuss summer updates from Penn State football and a key defensive player who's out with a long-term injury. This week on the Nittany Dispatch. Hello and welcome to the Nittany Dispatch. I'm John Sauber, Penn State beat writer at the Center Daily Times. She is Audrey Snyder, and we are fresh off of a early June press conference, Audrey, with James Franklin and his assistant coaches.
That was a long pause after you said my name, John. That was like you didn't know what to say. This is Audrey. She's here. She's alive.
Listen, there's some like muscle memory there that you're trying to suppress when you do these intros.
The summer of Audrey continues.
Yes.
I'm in State College. I was over there in the football building with John today, kind of keeping the staying sharp, right? Doing my interviews like I've been doing all spring as I kind of figure out my my unemployment spree, I guess we call it at this point. I don't know, the summer of Audrey, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's nice to touch base with Penn State's coaches in these kinds of laid back, a little more informal setting. Again, it's early June. Like there's not really going to be anything earth shattering that comes out of this, but it's nice to see them. I sat down with James Franklin in May for a while for some other stuff I'm working on. So again, like, this is the first he's spoken in a group setting since the blue-white game. But you know, like I've talked to him. I believe you've talked with him as well. Like we've seen him in various settings, which is nice.
Yeah, and you know, I did sit downs with Jim Knowles and Andy Kotelnicki too, and I'll have some of that stuff throughout this summer. You know, going to talk to some players upcoming soon as well with some one-on-ones. As you said, talk to James actually on Tuesday this week, and very excited for that story. That will be a late July. I'm not going to tease anything about it. It'll be
wishing away the whole summer, aren't you, John?
Yeah, something I'm looking forward to writing though. I got to talk to a bunch of people for it, but yeah, we've kind of seen people around. You see people walking around too, campus anytime you're like in the area or whatever. You know, everyone's still around. Yeah, right. And I think the coaches go on vacation here soon, so they're going to get kind of their break before they have to be full go. Because I was talking to some people the other day, and you know, 6 weeks from now, I'll be in Las Vegas for media days, and that is alarming. And this is before I even have used up all my vacation time for the summer. I don't know what's happened.
Yeah,
how
I
this
guess that
continues
is
to
6
happen.
weeks.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Now you're making me start to panic about my life, John. That's 6 weeks away.
I think you'll be all right.
It's one of those. It is like I love this time of year because it's like there's this lull of, again, recruiting stuff's going crazy. You have that, right? There's that side of it, official visits, camps, all that stuff's going on. But where it's so different, or at least in my mind this year, and again, when you're unemployed, everything's different, right? It's like there's this buildup for this season, unlike anything else in my time here. And I think this is maybe season 15 or whatever, something like that, of covering this program. And it's so different because everybody's like, okay, but do you think they can do it? Right? What about Penn State, Oregon?
Yes. Everyone I talk to asks me like, are they actually going to be preseason number one? Do you think they can actually win the national title? Every single person I know. I was at a wedding last weekend and I got asked that question so many times. I was like, I don't know, man. It's June. Like what? It was still May when I was getting asked. I was like, can we relax a little?
Oh, it is, but it's so. I think that's what's so special. Again, Penn State fans are crazy in a very good way. They're crazy about the program at all points of the year and want to know, you know, what do you think about XYZ? But this year in particular, because the national profile is as high as it's ever been, because of the players they're bringing back, it's just special to live in a community like that where there are those conversations. Like I was in my neighborhood at the pool yesterday and talking to people, and they're like, but what do you think about the whiteout? Do you really think they can beat Ohio State this year? Like, what do you know? And I love having those conversations because it kind of gives you insight into the fan mindset and that sort of thing. Again, we can see the construction happening at Beaver Stadium on a day-by-day basis when you live here. You know, you start to see that it looks different. But yeah, the ebbs and flows of the offseason are interesting to me. But now it's like, okay, like we're, as you said, John, 6 weeks out from Vegas. And then shortly after that, they're reporting to camp. And as Nevada no, James Franklin says Nevada. I say Nevada. We'll be here before we know it.
Apparently Nevada is correct. I'm going to keep calling it Nevada. That's fine.
Yeah, just keep rolling with it.
Yes, I'm just going to keep going on that. But yeah, we talked to James today. Nevada did not get brought up.
Surprisingly, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, it felt like none of the season really got brought up, right? Like even the whiteout. Like I kind of expected someone to ask about it. I wasn't going to, but I was a little surprised someone didn't kind of tee him up to unload on the fact that they could finally have a night whiteout against Oregon, which I mean, I guess we haven't talked about yet on here either. But yeah, that whiteout, that's, I had heard probably a month and a half ago that this was going to be the likely outcome, that NBC night game, all that stuff. And you were like, yeah, that makes sense. As long as Fox doesn't have the broadcast there, that was going to be the case, right? They're going to do whatever they could to make this a night game. And I will be curious to see how the rest of the schedule shapes out. I would not be surprised if Penn State is at noon a bunch in some other games that Penn State fans don't want to be at noon at. And just because I think, we saw that with Ohio State last year too. When you're that level of profile, every time Fox gets your game, they're going to stick you at noon. And the opponent doesn't even have to be that great for it. So I will be curious to see how all of that plays out. But I think it goes unsaid, but they got it right. Obviously, there was no other choice. This is the perfect whiteout game for Penn State. If Penn State had its way, this was always what it wanted.
Yeah, and I think, last year the whole thing, deservedly so, the consternation around the scheduling and the way it worked out and the Big Noon Sucks t-shirts and the backlash and all of that. Again, rightfully so. Like, I understand it. I hate the noon traffic jams as much as anyone else. Like, at some point, you gotta get it right. And to me, this is like, okay, it's like, you know what, Penn State, you've soldiered on here, you've dealt with this. Let's reward you a little bit, give you this night game, but also like let's reward college football fans and let's reward people who are gonna see two of the best, most high-profile programs in a whiteout in the correct time slot and not some haphazard noon kick where people are sitting bumper to bumper for hours, trying to get into Beaver Stadium. So yeah, that's going to be fun. Going to be a lot to look forward to. Again,
I cannot wait to drive to the whiteout at like 4:00 and not sit in any traffic.
You just jinxed it.
No, it's impossible.
You just jinxed it.
Listen, I could leave at 5 then. It's fine. I'll figure it out. But
you're gonna get stuck behind like a broken truck, and there's gonna be a whole thing. And yeah,
these night games are so wonderful to drive to. Like, there's no wait. I love it so much. You get there. It's like driving on a non-game day, quite frankly, if you want to get to Beaver Stadium. But yeah,
8 minutes for me. Yeah, I timed it today, getting over to the building. I was like, yep, 8 minutes. Nobody on the road. Love it.
I go the back way. I think it's about 21 minutes if I go that way. But this is perfect, like you said. And it's not just Penn State fans. Like, listen, these are 2 top 5 teams in the country. And yes, I would be stunned if they're both not top 5 teams when that time rolls around. It would take a pretty significant upset, which not impossible, but I'm not projecting it. It would take a pretty significant upset for these not to be top 5 teams in the country. And college football fans want to see top 5 teams competing in these raucous environments. Like, it's why we all love the sport. It's why it's different than a lot of professional sports, even, quite frankly, because the atmosphere is on some level unmatched. Like even in college football, yeah. Right? Like, you get to the postseason and it's more corporate-y. Like, national title games are more corporate-y. Like,
brought to you by Allstate.
Right. No, everything is. Don't get me started.
Dr. Chest Pass competition.
Yes. But yeah, it's one of those things where this is what people want. This is why people fall in love with the sport. And I think everybody wins in these situations. I'm not going to shame Fox for picking Penn State games. They're trying to do a job too. I just don't care. Audience. Yeah, I don't care about what they want. You know what I mean? What fans want is the primetime big games. I'm not going to do that. Like, this reminds me of the discourse around the NBA finals. Like, people are like, Oklahoma City and Indiana, that's terrible for the league because the ratings are, who cares? You're a fan. You're not supposed to care about the market size. Like, that stuff, you shouldn't care about these places' TV ratings. And
100%.
You should want the night games and big games.
I can honestly tell you, John, I have never in my lifetime watched a sporting event and said, wow, I can't wait to see what the TV ratings are for this game. that is the furthest thing from my mind, right? It's like,
I
oh
would
wow,
not
the
be
Packers are
watching.
on. I'm gonna watch.
Yeah, I would not be watching game 1 of Thunder Pacers thinking about the population sizes of those 2 cities, like or the market sizes of those 2 cities. It won't cross my
Don't care.
mind once. And frankly, it shouldn't cross anyone that isn't directly involved in those things' minds either. Enjoy the sport. I know I got off on a tangent there, but this is still like, this is what people want. And I'm glad that it's happening. And I hope it happens with other games too. I know again, some educated guessing in what I hinted at earlier, but like, I still am going to hold out hope that all of the biggest games are at the best times where it can be like this appointment viewing, because that's the other part about noon games. And I cannot believe we've turned this into like a 10-minute discussion about this. It is June though, but like these noon games, there are so many more games on at that time of day that there's like, if there's an upset somewhere else, like suddenly your attention's turned away. Like I want these big games to be the focal point of that hour. So like all of my focus can be on, number 2 against number 5 or number 1 against number 3, rather than like, well, number 17 is about to get upset. And you're like, well, I kind of want to keep an eye on that too. Like this is, to me, the college football schedule is like lower ranked teams, non-ranked matchups early in the day, maybe like a number 14, number 18 on CBS at 3:30, and then your big game at night. And I really wish desperately we could return to that form in some way.
It's the appetizers and the main course, John.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and no better dessert than Pac-12 After Dark, by the way. None.
Of course. Like that's the appropriate scheduling. That's how it should be done. Now, I think, if I am correctly, I think I can say this. I think though Penn State fans will say, John, we absolutely want Ohio State at noon. We do not want that at night. I think. Right?
I think
the
they would say that
atmosphere,
too. And then in that
right?
case, I think some people might get what they want. But yeah, I get it. Like I don't know. As the objective observer here, I would still rather that game be at 8:00 in Columbus at night. I think that'd be a lot of fun to watch from our perspective to cover. And I think college football fans at large would really enjoy it. But again, that is like 10 minutes on something James Franklin did not address
Was
today.
not asked about.
One of the things he did address, though, was that defensive end Max Granville, who's a redshirt freshman, redshirted last year despite playing in 7 games because of the postseason rules, is out with a long-term injury. I've seen a lot of speculation about what that injury is. We're not going to speculate about it, but I think it is fair to call what happened a long-term injury. And this is, it's definitely a blow to Penn State, right? Like even,
Sure.
Typically when James says long-term, it's usually, and I'm emphasizing usually, out for the season. I wouldn't be surprised if that were the case here, because of the nature of these sorts of things. But it's tough. That he was going to be Penn State's 3rd defensive end, I think, behind Zariah Fisher and Denai Dennis Sutton, with a chance to kind of push Fisher specifically. Now they're going to be relying on young guys to kind of pick up the slack. I don't know that it's going to, like, it doesn't lessen the ceiling for Penn State this year at all. They're still obviously a national title contender and a team that can win it all and be the number 1 team in the country for a good chunk of the year. But it no doubt hurts a defense that is already going through a little bit of a transition.
Yeah, and it's one of those that, Franklin said, hey, his heart breaks for him and for his family that he got hurt when he was back home, right? So
He was
you have
working
those,
out back home on summer break.
yes, you have those semester breaks, guys get out of here for a short amount of time, then they come back. Really just unfortunate all around. But yeah, I think you look at Granville, who was one of Penn State's most promising young players last year, and then obviously with the Abdul Carter injury down the stretch, you see more of him. You see the flashes, you see the potential. Like he was one of those people all throughout the offseason, especially in the spring. There was hype and it was building. And it was, I remember taking the photo back in February and he pointed to his wrist. He's got the tattoo of the watch that says time is now. Like this is a guy who physically looked the part too, like looked like somebody who was ready to really take that significant next step. But yeah, now, if you're Penn State, it's okay. Well, what are you going to do now? What's the depth looking? Did you catch this, John, that it was interesting that James Franklin said he believes, so Penn State believes that Zariah Fisher might have 2 years of eligibility left?
I don't think he said might. I think he said
he has 2, like
he
per
said
our.
Zariah has 2 years left. And I was like, all right.
Yeah.
Like, again,
I was like,
I think
sure,
I've said this on the pod before. He's supposed to know that. I'm done guessing when guys are running out of eligibility. I'm
Yeah.
honestly, there will be guys that have been here for like 7 years at the end of this year that I'm going to send some texts and be like, this guy's done, right? Like, we're sure that he can't come back for another year.
Riley
Because now
Thompson,
there's
can you redo your freshman year again and again?
right. But like, well, and here's the thing. I think Riley Thompson has a couple years left still. And I think it would be
Probably.
unsurprising if he stayed until 2030 at this point. But yeah, I think that's very helpful for Penn State. Frankly, it might be better that he's only here for one more year because that means he would have a good enough season to head off to the NFL
Mhm.
and kind of take that next step. Obviously, Penn State would want him back, and they've been so good at roster retention that you could make a reasonable offer to keep him. But I think him leaving probably isn't a bad thing for all parties involved because of what it would say about how he performed. And they're going to need that because they need to replace Abdul Carter's production. But I think a lot of that, frankly, will come from deny Dennis Sutton. Then you're just
Yeah.
kind of backfilling from there.
Yeah, I think they have one of the best defensive players in the country. And I'm not just saying defensive ends, but in the country and deny Dennis Sutton. Like I think that highly of him. I think again, you're gonna have this dip when it's Abdul Carter, but still, like it's not gonna be this drastic drop off. Now, okay, your depth is gonna start to come into question, and you're saying, okay, Zariah Fisher, you got to stay healthy, right? And that's what you're banking on at this point. But again, Deion Barnes has done a really nice job with developing guys. I think at this point, and Penn State, with their track record, especially with defensive ends, I think they deserve the benefit of the doubt in terms of like, okay, what's your depth? Are you going to figure it out? They're going to figure it out. Like, I think that's, you know, probably the only like bright side of this from the Penn State point of view is like that it happened now and not in August, where you do have a little bit more time to prepare. It also gives Max more time to heal on the back end of this thing. Kind of gearing up for the future there. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit in my mind, almost a little similar to the Andrew Rapplier situation, where you have a guy who gets hurt last year that you're like, man, this was a really promising guy, someone that everybody wanted to see more of, that you knew could contribute, you knew was going to play a pretty decent role, and you gotta wait another year, and that's just kind of where it is with Granville. But I did see, I don't know if you caught this or not, but Replier posted a video of him like
Yep.
training this summer. Again, to the untrained eye like myself, running around looked pretty good. Again, you'll see once these guys get rolling, and especially in camp setbacks. James Franklin did say that, it was Rapplier, Donko, and Tony Rojas that he expects that those guys, by the time camp starts, there aren't going to be any limitations. They should be good to go, which
Even
again,
said
that's
by the end of summer workouts, and he said
yeah,
if we saw him work out, we wouldn't them work out, all three of them work out, that we wouldn't notice that they weren't full go. Like they're kind of that
yeah.
close, which is important. Two things that I wanted to mention.
Mhm.
One, I don't think Denies the best player on this defense. Not a knock on him. Still think he's one of the best players in the country.
Oh, I know where
Just
you're going with this.
yeah, of course I think it's AJ Harris. Yeah, I mean, listen,
Yeah.
sometimes I pick a hype train on offense, sometimes I pick one on defense, and I've been all aboard the AJ Harris hype train. I think probably
Let's
since the
hope it
forced
goes
move off.
better than this Dante Cephas hype train.
Whoops. So we're not going to start
No,
blaming me
I
for
do think it'll go drastically. No, I think AJ
yes,
Harris is a
it
stud.
can go
I
worse.
think they do have a really special player there. Yeah, again, it's like Jim Knowles inherits a defense with a ton of talent. Um, and one of the things that's intrigued me that I'm kind of working on here in my free time is the balance between Andy Kotelnicki and Jim Knowles, and how do you make this work with the give and take of, hey, here's what I learned from you last year, right? It's like Ohio State had Andy Kotelnicki's number, right? So they've gone through it this offseason already. James Franklin, the coordinator, sat down and had a very honest, multiple hour conversation about, hey, this specific Penn State Ohio State game from last year, play by play. Here's what we were thinking, Jim. Why did you do this? Well, here's why. And both coordinators I was asking about today, like what has been the value of that for you and what's been the value of that for Drew Aller? Like I think that's where again this offseason is unique, is that the team that you have struggled mightily against, you now have this unique insight into how they viewed you, right? So yeah, I think that's part of it, but I think Jim Knowles has the talent here to work with to continue to elevate a defense that's been really, really good for a long time.
And I think has it at all three levels, right? The other thing I did want to mention too, you mentioned
Mhm.
Rappleyea. Uh, it was, and this is not a shot at him because I think he would have been a contributor, but like with Granville this year, we didn't. And what I think will happen with Granville this year, we didn't really notice that Rappleyea wasn't available, right? Because Tyler Warren
Mhm.
was that good, and I think that's going to happen to some extent again with how good I expected Identa Sutton to be. With I think the steps Uriah Fisher can take, and so I think the team won't miss him as much as they would if it were injury at another position. It kind of it like you said, and like James has said too, like an injury can reset the clock a little bit, and like it sets guys back and their development too because of the timing. So all of that is unfortunate, but strictly from a 2025 team perspective, I don't know that it's going to be this like massive game changer. The one thing I wanted to add, you mentioned Jim Knowles. I asked him about AJ Harris today, and he said
Of course
that
you did.
yeah, why
Of
wouldn't
course, yeah.
two things I'm always going to ask about AJ Harris and golf. Everyone knows that. But Harris specifically, I said about, I asked Harris earlier this spring about this. What has Jim Knowles added? And he said about like knowing the game better and being smarter and more having a better football IQ. And I asked Knowles about that. And I said like, well, you mentioned like that fifth defensive back position is like it requires like a lot of thinking, a lot of quick processing. Is like, could you see AJ Harris moving around? And he's like, oh, he could move anywhere on defense. It's just hard to give up a number one cornerback and have them play elsewhere. So to me, it sounds like correctly, AJ Harris will be sticking on the outside, and they believe that they have someone who can shut down other teams' number one receivers, and I think they're correct for that. But I think it kind of sets the tone that to me knows, not that this is a surprise, but values things sort of how you would anticipate someone like him valuing it, right? Like that number one corner is more important than that fifth defensive back, right? It's more important than even a starting safety. Like there's a hierarchy to these things, pass rush and coverage generally being the two things you care about most on defense. And I think that kind of rings true with Knowles, and the fact that he views Harris as that number one corner, I think bodes well for a team that is going to face some nasty receivers this year, specifically Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, I say the Jeremiah Smith offseason's been interesting to, again, I've had a lot of time to do reading and these kinds of things and been reading a lot this summer, which has been fun.
I assume
Um,
you're getting ready for the launch of EA College Football 26. Is that what you've been doing this offseason?
not at all. No, I have not broken down and gotten a gaming console yet. I'm not that bored. But I do have like this 3-week window now between my spring semester classes and my summer classes for my master's, where it's like this 3-week period where you're like, oh, I now have a lot of time on my hands. But Cleveland.com, they're rolling out, I don't know if you caught any of this, an entire like Jeremiah Smith week, like a week of coverage on this guy. And like, that's pretty cool. And I did want to say though, but I saw the Saquon Barkley Madden cover and the whole takeover in Philadelphia. My brother lives very close to there and was actually texting me photos because he was walking by that night and saw like the whole takeover happening and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. And I do think, John, and let me know if someone's written this story or not. Maybe I'm just giving away free ideas here, but a story
Yeah, I was
that I
gonna say,
think,
what are you doing? Tell me this after the
yes,
pod.
yeah, a story that I think needs to happen with Saquon Barkley, um, is something that maybe I'll just save for myself. I'll just cut the fun off there. But I do think there's some Saquon Barkley stuff that, again, it's the year of Saquon still, right? Like it's still there, that helps Penn State again elevate their profile even more.
It's been a decade
Which
since he arrived at Penn State too,
has it been a decade?
right?
Wow.
2015.
Yeah, that would have been.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was
Well,
still in
now that
college then, so
actually, John, that was my story idea. It's been a decade since Saquon
yeah,
Barkley
right.
got
I'm
here.
sure.
That was my idea.
No, there will
But
be.
no,
Listen, there will be a story series based
on
around
decades.
the centuries. Some would say so far, quarter
Okay.
centuries.
I was gonna say
That
centuries. Yeah.
you will have a say in. Various other beat writers will have a say in that I'm looking forward to as well this summer. We are a quarter way through the century now, which is terrifying. But yeah, no, I think there's been the Saquon stuff, for what it's worth. Like he's on the cover of a game that no one has played in a long time. This is not. I'm not blaming him for what it's worth.
Wow.
Listen, the college football game is significantly better than Madden. I think anyone who listens to this is going to agree with me. And I'm sure that the commenters who don't agree with me will be very loud and boisterous about their opinions. But yeah, this is an EA college football podcast in a big way. It's very much not a pro Madden podcast.
I'm not going to go down the gaming rabbit hole because I have not touched
to
the
be clear,
gaming console.
Unless they want to pay us, in which case,
we were big gamers. We love Madden. Yeah, I did. I mean, I played Madden a lot growing up, but that was also, again, as we got into last summer,
changed
my
since
gaming
then,
history. So it's pretty, just the same. It was cool seeing how they designed the cover. I saw like some behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, I want to be clear.
Like Saquon like elevated and levitating pretty much.
People know that he was on a wire, right? They don't think he was floating.
Well, that's what I'm hoping. Like, yeah.
Like this was
because that's the footage I saw. He was suspended on the wire.
That's how gravity works. Yeah, he's not like leveling up in midair.
Like, we're gonna need you to do that again. Sir,
we're gonna need you to jump a second time in the middle of your jump to make that happen.
It is pretty funny to see, or interesting. Like, my nephew's 5, and one of the things, again, living in Philadelphia, that stuck with him is like he'll be running around on the playground or whatever, and like he'll jump and he'll be like, "Look, I'm Saquon Barkley." Like the backwards hurdle. Now you've got all these little kids at the playground that want to do that. And it's like, you can't do that. Like, you're not going to be able to do that.
You will tear both hands.
Please don't try to do that.
Yes.
But it is cool to like see that impact and kind of like what one play, what moment, will mean for years to come.
Especially from the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. Let's not forget the important part of this, Audrey. Did you know that?
Sure. Yeah, I was aware.
Yeah. Okay. Just wanted to make sure you knew what happened.
Listen, the other team in the state is making some moves with quarterbacks, and
they certainly are.
That had my attention today. Yeah, I guess Aaron Rodgers is going to be a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's no way
throwing a Pat Freiermuth, who you asked about, right? Like,
I did ask you about that. Yes. Yeah, at Pro Day. Yeah, everybody's got their specific Tyler Warren angles at Pro Day, and here I am. I was like, Pat, but like Aaron Rodgers, like, would you want to play with him? What are your thoughts? Like, and then I was like, full disclosure, like, I think he's washed up, and again, this is like super fan Audrey. I'm like, I think he's washed up. And he's like, no, like, I've watched a lot of film of an Aaron. I'd love to play with him. Like, it would be great, blah, blah, blah. So Pat Freiermuth gets his wish. Like, good for him. Hope it works out. Especially, though, I hope it does not work out October 26th when the Packers are at Heinz Field. Yeah, that's actually the week leading into Penn State, Ohio State. I've already tried to look and say, ooh, could I finagle a Sunday night football in Pittsburgh and James Presser on Monday? Is that a thing? Could I make it work? We'll see.
I've been cross-checking some dates already for, once the NFL schedule came out. I believe both Los Angeles teams are out there when Penn State plays UCLA this year after neither being there.
Oh, are they?
And I believe there was one other one that I remember that stood out.
Eagles, November 10th.
Yeah, November 10th, which that's just going to be difficult to get. That's
Monday night, yeah.
Yeah, and it's so late in the season at that point that like we're all starting like playoff prep at that point. And frankly, if we aren't, like we're gonna be having very different discussions on this podcast and in our writing.
Gosh.
I don't think we're gonna worry about that, but it's going to be exciting either way. That being said, is there anything else that James said today that stood out to you? It was mostly like, listen, these summer availabilities, it's a lot of like usually big picture stuff. So I'm checking in on stuff real quick. James said that he thinks that the front end of the discussion about the college football playoff is kind of happening in the wrong place. Everyone's talking about how many automatic qualifiers, all that stuff. He thinks it needs to be more about like balancing everything out before then. That means either everyone has a conference title game, but no one does. That means everyone's playing the same number of conference games. Everyone's playing the same number of games.
That means you, SEC.
Yeah, and he's right too, by the way. I don't like they need to play. Like, I'm so sick of A&M Citadel on November 14th. Like, I'm tired of it. I don't want that to be on the schedule anymore. I would love it if they did the Big Ten SEC thing. And I think that door's open more if they do the 4 automatic qualifiers from the Big Ten, 4 from the SEC, because then it's like, okay, the non-conference doesn't matter as much. You can use it to like tune up for the real thing and trying to get to the playoff by being one of the top 4 teams.
Right? That's
and I think that would be more exciting for fans too. The other thing he said, I asked him about like if he believes that the selection process should be a committee making the rankings, or it should be like more formulaic like it used to be. And he said that, there are obviously positives and negatives to both, but he said he leans toward the formulaic part, although he did say that you could argue they're doing both now, which I disagree with, because the committee uses formulas. They can choose to ignore them too. That's why I disagree that they're doing both right now. I'm with him. Like, I think no one's going to like this. I think they should bring back the BCS formula. I think that was a good way to do it, especially if you're going to have, 4-4, 2-2-1 or whatever it was. The math is not mathing in my head right now.
Yeah.
But whatever it should be, that many automatic qualifiers and then 5, non-conf or 5 at-large bids. Let those 5 be the top 5 in that formula, because the committee, like, it's so subjective. And he's right about this too. He said everyone has biases, no matter, whether you believe it or not. Everyone's trying to be unbiased, but everyone has biases. We all, that applies to us too, right? Like, our entire careers are based on being objective and non-biased, but everyone has bias that they can't control, right? Based on like how you've lived your life and things like that. And so I think the easiest way to make that go away is by making it more formulaic and putting something together. Like, even if you want to do like 1/6 of it is the AP pool, 1/6 is the coaches pool, and then 4/6 is the computer algorithm. Like, I think that's fine too. But I just think there's got to be a better way than having X amount of people get in a room who, I'm sorry, they're not watching all of these games.
Well,
they're not like, and they watch conference championship game together or weekend together, but like they're not staying up. They're not watching from noon to 2 a.m. every Saturday. Yeah, like they're getting cut ups watching condensed games. Like, and even then, like, is this like a college football team where they can see how long you're watching the iPad and they can track how much film you've been watching?
Yeah,
it would be very funny if it was, and if it's not, it should be. But yeah, like it's putting people in, like, it's putting the committee members in an unfair position, because like they got other stuff to do. Like, some of them are athletic directors.
Yes.
Like, you
some
gotta
of them
be
have
doing
jobs.
other stuff. Yes. Just like 50% of this podcast. Some of them have jobs.
That's right. Some of them are employed.
Yeah.
I think there is, like, he again pounded the table for the need for a college football commissioner, right?
Yeah.
Now again, last time he brought this up at the Fiesta Bowl, he lobbied for Nick Saban, and like
Nick Saban did not like that.
The guy. Yeah, Saban was like, no, please. But again, it brings you back to the power structure in this sport and what's going to stay or change. And again, what is that playoff team number? And I mean, these are the kinds of things that happen in the offseason, seemingly every offseason in this sport, because that's just where it is and that's where it's going. And, what's going to change next? I mean, it is constant in this sport. But again, John, if they need a commissioner and they need someone who has a lot of extra time on her hands, I'm just saying, who has a resume ready to go.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like the 50% of the pod that's employed, only 50% of the pod has their master's degree too. And so that might be a requirement. So I guess I could have to step up in that scenario.
True. Then I can give them my half-cooked degree from the University of Tennessee, that they're like, oh, what do we do with this? But John, that could at least showcase that I've got a Big Ten and an SEC.
Big Ten, yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Yeah.
I think we have gone sufficiently off the rails for today.
Perfect.
We will be back probably in July to maybe preview Big Ten Media Days, or right after Big Ten Media Days. We'll figure that out. And, both of us will be posting on social media, probably Audrey more than me, as anyone who follows me knows, when that's coming out, what our plan is on that front. But we're almost there. Like, it's weird because I feel like I'm at the beginning of the off season, but also it's 6 weeks away. So I'm going to cherish these 6 weeks by golfing all the time. I'm sure you are. Or are we sure it's only 6?
Very different ways. Yeah.
You sure it's not 60 for you? But I think that's a good.
We'll find out.
I think that's a good place to leave it. You can find all of my writing over at senderdaily.com. You can find me on Twitter at John Sauber, and on Blue Sky. If you search John Sauber, you can find Audrey on Twitter at OddSnyder4. You can find her on Blue Sky if you search Audrey Snyder. I think it's audrey.snyder.bsky.app. I don't know. It's too convoluted and difficult. Yeah, it's just search our names. You'll find us.
Probably. Yeah, it's there somewhere.
Yeah.
We'll find it.
Don't forget to leave those 5-star rating and reviews on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate those. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button down below and the thumbs up button as I stumble over my words. We'll be back eventually, and we will be here every step of the way when stuff happens. Until then, thank you for tuning in. Have a great day.